Hi, this is Analog Girl, and today I'm going to talk about cleaning and loading the Beaulieu R16. But before we do that, I would like you guys to close your eyes for 10 seconds and just listen. So that was the sound of my Beaulieu R16 loaded with film and running at 24 frames a second. And the reason that I had you guys listen is because it's really important for you to learn what your camera sounds like when it's running correctly. And that goes for any camera, a Bolex, an Arri, a Beaulieu, an Eclair. You have to get used to that sound, and that way when you're shooting and something goes wrong, you'll hear it right away. Our ears tell us a lot. So if you're shooting and something sounds off, then stop right away and try to see what's going on. Put the camera in a changing bag. You'll always have a changing bag with you, and you can reach around and just make sure that everything's okay before you waste a bunch of film or before you have a bigger problem like a camera jam. Okay, let's clean the camera. It's important, of course, to clean the camera before you load it with fresh film. The first thing we'll do is we'll open it up, and we're going to place the cover down with the outside of the cover on the work surface. You don't want to put the inside on the work surface where it might pick up some dust. But the first thing is we're going to clean the gate. Now you'll see that the gate is a little bit hard to access with the R16. You can't really access it from the inside of the camera because the pressure plate does not come off. It just snaps back. So what I do to clean the gate is I take off this body cap, and then you can see where the mirrored shutter is. Now, you don't want to go poking anything or blowing any air into that area until you make sure that the mirror is rotated out of the way. And the way that you'll make sure that the mirror is rotated out of the way is by inserting a screwdriver into this port right here. So that port is for sync sound. This camera came with a pilot tone generator, and theoretically you could still hook it up to a Nagra and do sync sound with the Beaulieu if you could find a Nagra and a cable. And it's also really loud, so I'm not sure that you would want to do that, but it is possible. So you're gonna turn, if you look down in here, you can see that there's I'm going to shine a light in here and maybe it'll be easier to see. You can see that there's a screw head in there. And so we're just going to turn that with a screwdriver, and you'll see that that rotates the shutter. If this is your first time doing this, this is what I recommend. Take a little piece of scrap film and just load it in the pressure plate. And then when you're looking through into the gate, you'll be able to see the emulsion of the film, so you'll know that the shutter is completely rotated out of the way. So let's try that again. Okay. Let's clean the gate. I'm going to use an orange stick, a wooden stick. Don't ever use a metal stick. You could use plastic if you could find one. And I also have this magnifying flashlight so I can see what I'm doing. It's hard. I feel like I need another hand. It's easier to do this if you're on a tripod. And I'm gonna just go gently around the perimeter, very carefully. It's so tight in there. You're just trying to Scrape any emulsion that may have built up. And then once you are finished with that, you're going to use just blast it with canned air. Shake it. Always hold the canned air upright, because if you don't, some chemicals can shoot out. And just very carefully give it a blast. Okay, so the gate's clean. Let's clean the pressure plate. And then I'm going to close that, and I'm going to put this cap back on before I forget. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this piece out completely. And I'm going to first use this brush. This is actually a vintage shaving brush. Now, if you buy a brush, make sure you get a decent one so it doesn't shed, but you don't want to shed hairs in your camera body. And I'm just going to give it a little brush. And then I'm going to blast it with some canned air. So that looks clean, but before I load, what I like to do is just give a last look with the magnifying glass flashlight, just to see if I haven't missed any bits of dust that might have accumulated. So I'm gonna do that. Yeah, and it looks like there's a little bit of dust up here, so I'm gonna give that another squirt. Okay, that's looking good. Let's load it. Here's a dummy roll. And what I do, now this is where my method differs a little bit from some of the other videos that you might see on YouTube. I like to load my camera with it set at 2 frames a second, the slowest speed. And that's just how I like to do it. You can certainly watch some of the other videos and you might like that method better. Again, it's personal preference. So what I do, I just hold a little tail out from the spool and I place it on the feed side and wiggle it until it snaps into place. And then you're going to lift this piece up at halfway. You don't have to remove it. And then get the film around these sprockets. So you want to make sure that the sprocket holes are engaged with the sprockets. So give it a little tug, and you'll feel resistance. So you'll know that it's in there correctly. And then push this back down. And then we're going to run some film off. I'm going to run just enough to go through to the other side of the pressure plate. Open the pressure plate. Now this part can be a little bit tricky. You're going to just sort of press the film down as much as you can and then close the pressure plate. I make the loop a little bit smaller than the arrow and then I tug it back. And you're going to feel, this is the important part, you're going to feel that the claw is engaged. That's really important. If the claw is not engaged, I'm going to show you what happens if the claw is not engaged. I'm going to take it out and I'm not going to get it in the claw. And I'm going to close the pressure plate and see how the film isn't running through. Okay, so let's do it the right way. So let's press the film down and close the pressure plate. And then I have the loop a little bit smaller than what the arrow is, and then I kind of just wiggle it back until I feel the claw engage. The claw's engaged now, and you can if you seesaw the film back and forth really gently, you can feel that there's some resistance. Okay, and now I'm going to run a little bit more through. Oops, see, oh, look, it wasn't in. Aha, see, that's what I'm saying. You got to be really careful. All right, let's try that again. That's why I like this 2 frames a second speed method of loading, because that way if it was at 24 frames a second and I did that, then I'd just be wasting film. So let's try that again. All right, it feels like that's in there. I'm feeling some resistance. Now I'm gonna pop out this metal piece halfway again, and I'm gonna form the lower loop. So what I do is I have it touch this lower loop former, and then from there I back it off a little bit by 1 sprocket hole, and you again push it down and make sure it's engaged in the sprocket hole, and then I'm gonna press it down. So actually I feel like that loop is a little bit small, so I'm gonna lift this up again halfway, and then I'm gonna just carefully back it off another frame, and there we go. All right, and we'll roll off a little bit more. Okay, so we're ready for the take-up spool. So I bend over the edge of the film, and then you insert it in the slot that's in the daylight spool. And then you're gonna just wind it around a couple of times. Move your footage counter out of the way so you can pop this down on and snap that in place. Make sure that's down. And now I'm going to switch it back to 24 frames a second and roll off a few feet, and that looks good. Put the cover back on. Make sure that's locked. Test your cover. And you're good to go. Okay, that's it. The camera's loaded, ready to go. This is Analog Girl. I'll see you next time.